公民总主笔。
Welcome to Residence Messenger on Taipei Broadcasting Station on New Year's Day with our very special guest, Johannes from Travel in Taiwan magazine, a magazine of the Tourism Bureau, and the website taiwaneverything.cc. Johannes, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Before we get into a lot of detail about great places to visit in Taiwan and some of your experiences living and traveling in Taiwan, tell us a little bit about yourself. Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in a town called Detmold in Germany. It's about population 70,000, so a small town, very quiet in the northwestern part of Germany.
Yeah, I've had several guests from Germany on the show, and when they come from small cities or towns, they always describe it just like that, right? It fits the stereotypes we have of just very nice, beautiful, great places to grow up, kind of places, good air, near the forest, things like that.
Yeah, we have forest.
Yeah, it just seems like a pattern with Germany. Of course, Germany does have a reputation for such a great quality of life and outdoors. People are very into sports. So when you were growing up, what did you want to be? Because not a lot of people want to. They don't aspire to be travel writers.
Yeah, I always, from a very early age on, I wanted to go abroad. That's for sure. I never thought about exactly what I wanted to do. Maybe pilot. That would have been nice because I like to be on the road, being in airports, railway stations, crossing borders.
Did you do a lot of traveling around Europe when you were a child?
As a child, with my family, we usually, like most families in Germany, we have summer vacation, holiday, and usually we went up north to Denmark, sometimes Norway and Sweden. So my parents didn't like the idea to go to Italy or Spain like most other people.
They didn't like the beaches. They wanted to go to.
They didn't like the crowds. So we always went to Denmark, the northern tip of Denmark.
So then you decide when you get older, you'd go to some of the more crowded places in the world, like big cities in Asia.
I still like the outdoors more than the cities. So even here in Taiwan, I prefer to go to the mountains or the ocean, to the beaches, the coast, and stay.
Now you said when you were a child, your parents liked to travel for holiday in the northern parts of Europe, such as in Scandinavia. Did you know about Asia when you were a young man, a child, say back in the 1980s in Europe? Was Asia a part of the world that you had heard a lot of at that time?
Mostly through old movies on TV.
Yeah, some of those old martial arts movies.
Yeah, martial arts, kung fu movies. But not Jackie Chan, that was way earlier than that. Old black and white movies of kung fu masters.
Now, is that what inspired you to study Asian languages when you went to university?
In high school, I started to get interested in philosophy and Zen Buddhism, and I read a lot of books about Japan at that time. So whatever I could find in German translations of Japanese novels, I would buy and take home.
That's a pretty complex area. I mean, Zen Buddhism is complex, and of course Germany is known for its brilliant philosophers as well. But this is really complex stuff.
Yeah, it's complex in a way, but also very simple. Zen Buddhism is about nothing. You want to meditate and then concentrate on or nothing. So I always felt a deep connection with Japan, actually, not China or Taiwan. So my initial plan was to go to Japan.
When you were in university and studying a bit about Asia and Asian languages, and then eventually you came to this part of the world, was there something that you read in books or that your lecturers in university told you about Asia, that this is how things are done in Asia, or this is the way Asian people think, this is the way the economy or society are? Are there things they taught you in university at that time about Asia that once you got to this part of the world, you realized that it's different, the reality is different?
Yeah, I had a bit of culture shock in Japan as well as Taiwan, but I didn't expect very much before I came, and actually I went to Japan before I started my studies in the university. So I went to Japan and I didn't I wasn't disappointed at all. I liked every bit of it. And later on in Taiwan it was the same. I didn't have much expectation really, so I couldn't say, oh, those professors at the university, they told me wrong or something.
You first came to Taiwan in 1989, and you said you liked it from those kinds of first impressions from when you arrived. What was it about Taiwan that you liked from the moment you arrived?
The first day I remember very clearly. It was a dark November day, and I ended up at the area around the Taipei railway station. It was gloom and doom, like tall, dark buildings and
noisy buses, motor scooters.
Yeah. And I was standing there on the pedestrian bridge across Zhongxiao West Road. It's gone long by now, and I didn't know what to do. I hadn't booked any hotel. So and then some young guy, a student, I suppose, approached me and asked me if I was lost or something. And he took me by hand to the next hostel, and that was my first impression of my first encounter with the Taiwan person in Taiwan, and it was a good impression. So helpful people, friendly, hospitality, and this would repeat itself over and over again during my stay here.
Now, the first time you came to Taiwan, how long did you stay?
I did stay half a year first, and then I had to do a visa run and came back.
I don't know if you want to talk about that on the radio.
Yeah, I mean, it was legal, right? I didn't break any laws. So at that time, it was a lot of things were done like that. So I did spend like a year or so in Taiwan and then went back.
Well, was there something though about Taiwan at that time that reminded you of Germany and that gave you sort of a comfort level here, or were you looking for something that was very different from Germany and you found that here? What was some of the thoughts that you had about potentially staying here?
I didn't see many similarities, to be honest, but I enjoyed the differences. So the faster pace of life, everything was like more vibrant and more. I always feel when I go back, even if I go back now to Germany, I find it so boring there.
But this was at a
life is so slow.
But this was at a time when Germany was undergoing a fairly rapid change.
Yeah, I totally missed the
fall of
the wall. I totally missed.
You were in Taipei.
Yeah, I watched it on TV. So yeah, but that was political. What went on in Germany at that time? It's quite. I missed all of that.
What about the food when you first arrived in Taiwan in the late 1980s, early 90s? Were you able to enjoy the food right away? Was it something that fit you and the things you like to eat?
Yeah, it's difficult to not find anything you like because there's so much variety in Taiwan. And I really enjoyed going to the night markets. I still don't like the smell of stinky tofu, and I don't really enjoy eating intestines or some of the seafood here. But
there's similar things in German cuisine as well, aren't there?
Sure, there are some things you don't want, like stinky cheese. A lot of kind of. Cheese is especially known for being something foreigners don't like to eat in Germany. But in Taiwan you can find a lot of different food, like vegetarian fare. It's easy to find, or if you like meat or seafood, everything is available. Or even international cuisine. If you can't deal with the Taiwanese cuisine, it's very easy to find Western cuisine in Taiwan.
You lived in Hong Kong in the 1990s as well. What was it like for you spending some time in Hong Kong?
1997, just before the return of Hong Kong to Chinese rule. There was still a lot of British influence there, a lot of foreigners, and I felt, compared to Taiwan, Hong Kong, there was always like a separation between the foreigners there, like the professionals working for international companies, and the local population. Might have to do with the language barrier, because I don't think a lot of Westerners learn Cantonese in Hong Kong, and Hong Kong people, they know how to speak English, and so I felt that it was much harder to get close to Hong Kong local people
compared to Taiwanese.
Taiwan, yeah. Mm-hmm. Found it much easier to approach.
Well, of course, Taiwanese people do have that reputation for Renqing Wei.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Renqing Wei, and you are probably much. Also compared to Japan, I felt that in Taiwan you are accepted more into the family than probably in Japan, where it's more.
Well, they certainly do. Yeah, they also have the reputation for more of a barrier between foreigners or outsiders, people they don't know very well.
Yeah, that's compared to Hong Kong. Also, I felt that Taiwan was a little bit. I don't know about now because I haven't been to Hong Kong for quite a while. But I felt that Taiwan was a step behind when it comes to internationalization or fashion or modernity. And I didn't feel that it's necessarily a bad thing, because coming to Taiwan felt always like it's more relaxed, less business, it's more easygoing in Taiwan.
Yeah, I think a lot of foreigners would agree with you, especially if they spend time in different locations in Asia. So very quickly you decided Hong Kong was not for you and you wanted to come back to Taiwan.
Yeah, I didn't mind. I think Hong Kong has beautiful spots, especially. I like to go hiking, so I found a lot of hiking trails in like the new territories. And it's I was quite surprised to find very secluded spots, very quiet spaces. You could see the big city from the
you can see the skyline from some of those hiking
trails.
So
you know Hong Kong as well. So it's a fascinating place, Hong Kong. I didn't mind to say. I also like to go to the islands, taking the ferries.
And yet you decided to come back to Taiwan, and you worked as a translator for many years with a focus on software. That sounds quite difficult.
Yeah, and boring.
Well, hopefully your former employers are not listening.
Yeah, no, I don't care. I did a lot of translations for software companies, and like Acer and HEC smartphones, and also companies in mainland China. And it's a very boring and tedious job. It's a lot of repetition, a lot of typing, and you sit at home for 10, 12 hours a day. I mean, the money is okay, but after a while you get really, it's not good for your health.
What makes for a good software translator, whether translating from Mandarin into foreign languages or foreign languages into Mandarin? Besides just knowing the technical words, what else is important for a good software translator?
I think for these big companies, they produce products in English first, and then it's translated into other languages. So I didn't have to deal with Chinese. It's always English to German for me, and it's always best to translate into your own language, because it saves time and it's more accurate. And you have to know what's going on in the industry, and you have to do a bit of research and see if it's a software program. You have to test it out to see what the functions are and stuff like that. But I did some difficult projects from mainland China where it was way too difficult for me because it was about company software, so corporation stuff.
It's like enterprise.
Enterprise, and it's much easier to do like consumer products, because you can relate to it. But if it's about company security and stuff like that, you really have to work hard to understand what's going on. Also legal documents, I did a lot of those, and it's always frustrating to have really long sentences, a whole paragraph, one sentence, and you have to translate it into another language.
So what were some of the more complex products that you helped translate? You mentioned that the enterprise software was difficult, but is there something that the public would relate to that you could share with us that you worked on?
Mostly. I didn't really do any, apart from the enterprise stuff, most products were quite easy to translate, actually, like smartphone applications. I mean, how difficult can it be? Or
I don't know. Some of us are kind of technologically idiotic, including myself. That's why it's so important that the translator is able to do a good job.
Yeah, I think the most difficult part is because if you know the English very well, you assume that the people, like in my case, the German consumers know English as well, and you have to decide which terms are to be translated or left in English. That's one area.
It sounds like a very powerful decision, role that you had, whether or not to pick certain words to keep in English or translate.
That's part of the job. Yeah. I mean, as a translator, you always have to make sure that nothing goes wrong on the other end.
And then you transitioned into writing about Taiwan travel.
Yeah, I started to write. When I came to Taiwan, I started part-time to work for a publishing company, small company who publishes magazines and brochures and pamphlets for the government. And it's all tourism related, so promotional material. And one of the magazines is Travel in Taiwan. I'm still working at the company, and we produce this magazine for the Taiwan government, the Taiwan Tourism Bureau.
So you started out part-time, but then eventually joined them full-time.
Yeah, I started to become the editor. I became the editor in the end of the magazine, and now it's more like a full-time job.
And what languages do they publish in addition to English?
Yeah, we have one English magazine, also Japanese and Korean.
Do you do the Japanese one as well?
No, the Japanese colleague does that.
And you've been doing this during a period when so much of what we read transitioned from hard copies to being online. What has that been like for a publication that's trying to encourage people outside Taiwan to look more at Taiwan or consider visiting Taiwan? What kind of challenges did that transition create?
For the government has been asking us to find ways to make it digital, and we actually produced an app, the magazine in app form, so for Android and iOS systems. So we could download the app until the end of this year. So unfortunately, we had a beautiful app we could download for free, but it's the numbers haven't been that great, so we decided to switch from the app to a website, and I'm currently building the website for the magazine. So all the articles in the magazine will be published on the website.
And how does that content differ from what might be available on the Tourism Bureau's website itself, on the Tourism Bureau's own website, compared to the Travel in Taiwan magazine website?
Yeah, the Travel in Taiwan website will be just the articles from the magazine, and I mean the Tourism Bureau website has much more content about all kind of tourism-related topics. And we are just, the magazine is a bi-monthly, so it's published every 2 months, and we have various articles about different areas of Taiwan, and we try to cover every part of Taiwan and all kind of activities.
Before we get into more detail about places to visit and activities in Taiwan, I mean, of course this year, it's been the year of COVID-19, or I should say 2020, the year that just ended. When you talk to family back home in Germany, what do they tell you about the situation there?
In Germany, I talk to my family, my mother, from time to time, and it's been, over the last few weeks it has picked up again, and the town where my hometown has been unfortunately one of the centers where it has been a bit worse than elsewhere. So they try to stay home as much as possible, and I hope my younger brother, who lives with them, is careful when he comes back home, and doesn't bring the virus with him.
And then, of course, you would share with them that here in Taiwan, it's almost normal, business as usual kind of conditions.
Yeah,
what do they say?
It's very strange because in the beginning it was the logical path should have been Taiwan was more affected than in the rest of the world because of the proximity to mainland China.
Sure.
And I think they were much more worried about me than I was about them.
You mean about a year ago, last January and February?
Yeah, okay. And so I don't know why, but Taiwan has done very well in fighting the crisis.
Well, probably because the borders have been pretty much locked up, which limits the number of tourists that could come to Taiwan. Were there any stories that you had hoped to write about in 2020 about destinations in Taiwan that over the course of the year you decide, well, we shouldn't write about this, there's no need because there won't be a lot of foreign visitors coming to Taiwan. So you maybe put those stories on hold.
Yeah, because Taiwan didn't have any lockdown, so everything is practically like normal. So we have a yearly plan we have to follow, so we didn't need to change much, really. I mean, there were a few festivals and events that were cancelled because of COVID, but...
Normally you would have written about those festivals?
Yeah, probably. If not a full article, but maybe a mention in a section about tourism events. So, but basically we followed our plan and we traveled like usual, with mask on in public transport. That's practical. That's almost the only thing that has changed for us.
And what about for 2021? Did your plan? You mentioned your annual plan for what you're going to cover. Did the plan for 2021 change because of COVID-19 as far as what content you'll have in the magazine?
Yeah, there were discussions with our client, the tourism bureau, about the content. But basically, we have decided to just continue what we had planned before, and I think the Tourism Bureau for next year has declared the year of bicycling tourism. So we have focus on that.
But that was something that was planned long before COVID-19.
And I think the government thinks that because of the very positive coverage of Taiwan during this COVID crisis, there's a lot of interest in Taiwan as a tourist destination once traveling is possible.
That's the key, right? Once traveling is possible, not right now.
Yeah. So hopefully the way Taiwan has dealt with the crisis has some positive outcome for at least when it comes to tourism in the future.
Does references to COVID-19 make its way into articles about place? So, for example, if the writers for the publication were writing a story about a particular destination or venue in Taiwan, would it be appropriate to include references to COVID-19 and talk about how the venues take preparations, or it's just something that it's not a happy thing, so you just avoid it? Yeah,
usually we stay clear of any negative things. For example, earthquakes, typhoons, political turmoil, and in this case, pandemic. I think we have some notes. For example, when in the events section we say that that some events might have been cancelled, but in articles we don't ask our writers to include any information about COVID because it's widely available elsewhere. So we want to focus on the positive things Taiwan has to offer in terms of tourism, and hopefully people will see that Taiwan is a great place to come once it's possible again.
Okay, speaking of great places or things that Taiwan has to offer, we'll be talking about those in more detail. But first, we'll take a short break. You're listening to Residence Messenger on Taipei Broadcasting Station. Welcome back to Residence Messenger on Taipei Broadcasting Station. Our special guest today is Johannes Twellmann from Travel in Taiwan magazine and the Taiwan Everything.cc website for great information about traveling in Taiwan and places to visit. So, Johannes, we were talking about COVID-19 right before the break, and the situation in Taiwan is great compared to most places around the world, but there's still some precautions and concerns. So, amid COVID-19, what kind of travel or what kind of places to visit have still been popular here in Taiwan with people who are obviously here because we don't have many foreign visitors right now, but taking into account COVID-19, what travel has been popular this year, or I should say last year, or looking forward to this year, 2021?
Yeah, during the summer, because of the COVID situation, you had a lot of domestic travel going on, and I think especially the offshore islands like Penghu and Green Island have been overwhelmed by the additional domestic tourists going there.
Now, would they have had that level of foreign visitors in a regular year without a pandemic, or they would not have had that many foreign visitors, but because of the pandemic, they got a lot more domestic visitors?
Yeah, I think I have to guess, but I think usually foreign tourists are not going to the offshore islands are not that many. So there was an increase because of the COVID situation, because of the additional domestic tourists. And also like beach resorts like Kenting they have been much more tourists going there because of domestic travel.
But was there something about whether the offshore islands or the beaches like Kenting that really attracted people, or was it simply because they couldn't go overseas? They just said, we'll go to here or there, we'll go to Kenting, we'll go to Penghu or Jinmen. But was there something special going on in these places in 2020 that made them attractive to the domestic tourists?
Yeah, I think it's probably more there was no other place to go. But we went to other popular tourist areas as well during this year. For example, Sanmu Lake and Alishan, and it was very, very quiet. So
not very crowded. It was quiet.
Not crowded at all. So
is that because most people who live in Taiwan have seen these places already?
Yeah. First of all, because of the lack of foreign tourists, I think foreign tourists are more drawn to these areas, and probably Taiwan. Local tourists have been there before, have done it before.
Oh, so then that I'll ask you a tough question then. So for the local resident, whether a foreigner like us or Taiwanese, who've been to these places, who've been to Alishan, who've been to Sun Moon Lake sometime in their life in Taiwan years ago, maybe, is it time to go back? Is there a reason why, if I haven't been to Sun Moon Lake or Alishan in 5 or 10 years, and I didn't want to go because there were foreign tourists or tourists from China, there were a lot of those, and some people didn't want to deal with the crowds. Is there a reason to go back to give these places another chance?
Sure. We have done a lot of return trips. Return trips not the right word. We have been to the same places quite often because Taiwan is quite small. So sooner or later you have to write about the same places. But I don't mind at all to go to the same places. Like Sanmu Lake is, every time I go there is completely different. You have different weather. You have different maybe the season is different, and also. Even if you go to a city like Tainan, for example, we are going to write about that in the next issue. Even if you go there again after a year, you will find a lot of new businesses, shops, restaurants opening up, and there's always something new to discover. So I strongly encourage everyone to go to the same places again. It's not just you have been there, you don't need to go there anymore.
Well, what's the time period you would recommend? So if somebody said, Johannes, I was just in Sun Moon Lake 3 years ago. Would you say, oh, 3 years, you need to go back again? Or if they said that about Tainan or Alishan, or what's the time period when people really should consider a new visit, another visit to some of the more well-known destinations in Taiwan?
You can go there every year. And me personally, I think I wouldn't mind to go there again. And you can do different kinds of trips. I mean, you don't have to only go to one location. Only you can combine it with areas around in the vicinity, or you can check out new places to stay or new modes of travel. Like you can go bicycling. You can do a lot of different things. You can do kayaking, for example, or last time we saw people doing stand-up paddleboarding on Sun Moon Lake, so you can go camping there. A lot of different ways to experience the same place.
You just mentioned a whole bunch of outdoor activities. Time for another tough question, or maybe it's not so tough since you are so knowledgeable. But let's talk about each of these outdoor activities, and you tell our listeners a great place to go to do it, or maybe a place they haven't thought about, that's not as well known. So, cycling. Where's a great place to go for cycling?
Cycling. There are a lot of great bikeways all over Taiwan. I mean, there are long established ones, like in the East Rift Valley you have Guanshan and Chishan. It's a bit crowded. It can be a bit crowded sometimes during certain, for example, weekends or so, but it's still a very beautiful scenery there. And right now there are new bikeways just opened in Taichung and Hsinchu. And you can also, if you want to explore cities like Taipei, you have all these riverside bikeways, or Kaohsiung, you have bikeways on the Chichen Island and along the harbor. And what makes it very convenient, in the cities you can conveniently rent U-bikes. U-bike rental system is very popular and very easy to use.
Hiking. Can you give us a great place to go for hiking? Maybe a place that some people haven't thought of or haven't heard of. Moderate hiking, not for the expert hikers.
Yeah, if you want to hike close to the city, for example, in Taipei, there's of course Yangmingshan National Park. They have a lot of trails there, and it's not just Mount Qixing, the highest mountain, but also a lot of minor trails in the area. And what has been very popular in recent months is the new established Danlan historic trail system. The government is cooperating with private organizations to fix up the whole system, and there are a lot of new trails now fixed up, and it's a great area to explore if you are interested in easy hiking. And if it's the high mountains, of course, it depends on your abilities and the transportation you have available. If you have your own car, for example, you can go to Hehuanshan, and there are a lot of easy to reach peaks, and you can scale it up according to your desire. It's the smallest mountain, or the easiest to get mountain, is just 500 meters to the peak from the highway, but you can also go on multi-day treks.
Camping.
Camping. I haven't done much camping myself, but I would definitely check out campsites close to the coast, like all the way, like Taitung, Hualien. I'm not sure about Hualien, if there are any good campsites. Or also on the northeast coast, Furong, there's a nice place to camp. And when it comes to the mountains, there are a lot of secluded spots, but then you need your own means of transportation. Means of transport.
What about water sports? You had mentioned earlier some water sports. Some places that maybe people haven't thought of for good water sports in Taiwan. I mean, everyone knows Kunding and its beaches. Fulong Beach is popular in the north, but for water sports, is there a place maybe people haven't thought of or heard of that is actually a great place to go?
I mean, long-time Taiwan residents who are into outdoor sports, they know all the spots. Like popular, of course, is Taitung County, where you have nice surfing beaches. Also, Ilan, we have Waiau, or Usha Harbor, that beach, and on the north coast you can do a bit of water sports. We have actually done something, you know, the jet boards where you stand on a board and then it's powered. We have done this before on the north coast. That's kind of fun.
When people tell you about a great place they visited in Taiwan, and I'm sure because of the work you do, you get that a lot. You know, people come up to you and want to share their experience. Do they ever tell you about somewhere great they visited in Taiwan and then say, oh, but I don't want you to write about it because I want to keep it a secret. I don't want other people to know about my great secret place to go to in Taiwan.
A lot of mountain areas with hot springs in the wild. Those are popular places to keep a secret.
So people say that, you say, don't write about it. Don't tell anyone.
Yeah, I think the government is not going to allow it anyway, because some of these places are not safe to go, or maybe there might be problems with rockfall, or it's very difficult to get to, so it's not suitable for foreign tourists. But there are a lot of places, especially river tracing and hidden waterfalls and hidden natural springs on top of the list of places the locals or the people in the know would like to keep a secret.
Okay, we won't ask you any more about the great secret places to visit. What about for families and young people with young children? What are some great places to visit in Taiwan this year?
I don't have children, so I've never faced the question, where do I take my kids next weekend? But I probably would take them camping, going to, like I said before, to the coast or the mountains, and then have a base from where we could explore the beaches or mountain forests. That would be great. Also, there are a lot of leisure, what do you say?
Leisure,
recreational farms around Taiwan.
When you say that there are these recreational farms in Taiwan that are accessible for tourists, is that just for growing crops, or they're animals as well that visitors can interact with?
Yeah, there are a lot of different kinds of recreational farms. There are some farms with cows where you can dairy operations, and what I like about some of the farms is that you can get close to farm animals, and children like that to get a close look at sheep or goats or horses, and that's something I would probably consider when taking children on the road. Also, there are a lot of theme parks that are suitable for kids around Taiwan. We have written about quite a few of them.
Now, something that's really not ideal for kids, but it's become more and more popular in Taiwan for tourism, are breweries and whiskey distilleries. Tell us a little bit about tourism for places to visit for these kinds of things, or why has it become popular?
I don't know why it's become popular, but it has definitely been a trend in Taiwan. Microbreweries have been very popular, and also a lot of government-run distilleries or wineries have their tourist segment or section where you can experience, you can learn about the whole process of making wine or beer, and also they have usually a lot of things to try.
Yeah, maybe that's why it's popular.
But again, if you want to avoid the crowds, you have to choose wisely, because some of these operations are frequented by large tour groups coming in tour buses. So, but there's a lot to discover in terms of tourist factories in Taiwan.
What about accommodations in Taiwan for domestic tourism? When people ask you for advice, whether they're going to the beach or camping, or they want to go to Tainan or Taidong city, visit cities. What kind of advice do you give people? Right? I mean, there's Minsu, there's really a wide range of hotels from 2-star, 3-star, these kinds of traveler hotels, which are relatively inexpensive. Then, of course, there's the 5-star hotels as well. What kind of advice or thoughts do you share with people about accommodations at tourist destinations in Taiwan?
Very much depends on the level of comfort you want to have and the budget you have. But me personally, I prefer to stay in local B&Bs that it's called in Taiwan Minsu homestays. And I especially like the ones that are small and run by passionate owners who don't care much about making a profit, but they have maybe they are retired from their jobs and they left the cities for the countryside. Maybe they have built their dream house in Hualien or Taidong, and they really take care of the property and they welcome guests with open arms, and they are always helpful. Sometimes some of these owners will take you around and show you around, and that's I love these small places. Also, one of the major trends in hospitality has been opening places in the city. For example, in Tainan, in old buildings, they have fixed up the whole building, but kept the original structure intact. In these places, you can see a lot of vintage stuff, like furniture or old photographs. And I think some of these proprietors have done a very good job of preserving the heritage side of things.
That's as you said, that's a more recent trend. Years ago, you might see that in other parts of Southeast Asia, for example, such as in Singapore or Malaysia or Thailand, but it wasn't so common here in Taiwan.
Yeah, it's great to see how dedicated some of these people are. Not only hotels, but also restaurants in old buildings or like shops. And you can also see a lot of government projects where they have transformed old military dependence villages into tourist sites. So they kept the original houses and then fixed them up, and now that you can walk around and experience the old bit of history, and at the same time you have young people in these houses selling craft work or designer products or have coffee shops.
Well, what do you usually recommend to people for booking accommodations throughout Taiwan, whether it's at Minsu, homestay, B&B kind of accommodations, or inexpensive hotels, fancy hotels? A few years ago, the government tried to build a centralized website for booking accommodations. The industry reaction wasn't so excited about that. What do you usually recommend for people for booking accommodations?
You mean for booking? Yeah, there are a lot of websites dedicated to offering the cheapest prices, and I mean, you can do a lot of research there. I mean, TripAdvisor is obviously the one you want to check out the comments or the reviews, and a lot of different sites you can find the best prices. It's a bit overwhelming. Yes, there's so much information, and it's difficult to pinpoint the one that's right for you. But I mean, you can't complain about too much information.
What about for people here in Taipei who are looking for a staycation not too far from Taipei, or maybe even within the city? They don't have a lot of time to travel by road or train. What do you recommend for Taipei residents for staycations, for maybe a couple of nights, whether during the week or on the weekend? Where can people who live in Taipei go for a quick domestic holiday?
Domestic holiday. I mean, if you want to stay in northern Taiwan, I would probably recommend Yilan County. It's just an hour drive or a bus ride away, and there are a lot of small homestays, a lot of beautiful places. And then you can stay there and either it's easy to cycle around, or go. There are a few mountain areas you can check out. I probably would recommend Yilan, for a quick getaway from Taipei City. But Taiwan is so close; it's not that big, so you could easily go to southern Taiwan by taking the high-speed rail as well. So.
Well, what if people say, I don't want really an outdoorsy experience for a short staycation. I don't want to do camping or cycling. I just want to be pampered and be treated nicely for a couple of days. What kind of...
if you want to stay in a hotel the whole time, I would recommend... There's one new place in... maybe it's 2 years old now, in Raceway in the East Rift Valley. It's called, I can't remember. It's a very big place in the style of the castle.
I've seen photos of that place.
We have stayed there one. It's very, very comfortable. And there you can stay the whole time if you want. They have villas, like small, separate kind of houses. You can stay. It's not on the cheap side, but and they have villas with a pool and everything.
And what about within Taipei itself? If someone just has a weekend, maybe they could spend one night away from home, maybe with their partner, or if they have children. Within the city itself, what are some stay-cay options? You wanted to get out of the house, you wanted to stay somewhere, whether it be a heritage building or that's now become like a minsu, or a hotel. Maybe they want something scenic, but again, they can't travel very far. Within the city of Taipei, what are some options?
In the city, I honestly have never thought about that. to stay in the city if you are a resident of Taipei. I probably would still go a bit outside the city to Danshui, maybe. Find a place still in the new Taipei city area. Danshui, or go to. We have in one of the latest issues we introduced some places in Twellmann. Twellmann is known mostly for the old street, but there are actually quite a few very interesting old B&Bs where you can stay. And during the day, not now because of COVID. During the day, it used to be very crowded in the old street area, but once the crowds leave in the evening, it's very quiet in Twellmann.
Let's talk a little bit about the future. You had mentioned, for example, the Tourism Bureau hopes that the positive coverage of Taiwan's response to COVID-19 will result in more visitors, foreign visitors in the future. What's your outlook for Taiwan as a tourist destination, or even just Taipei City as a weekend destination for people in Asia? Give us some thoughts about the future of Taipei as well as Taiwan as a tourist destination.
I think in 2019 there were 10 million visitors per year, and that showed that the government has done a lot of good things to attract more tourists coming here. And I think Taiwan has a lot of potential in attracting more, but at the same time Taiwan is quite limited in size, and it's very difficult in some areas to accommodate more tourists. For example, in what I regard as the best tourist spot in Taiwan, the Taroko Gorge, it's very narrow, and you can only fit in so many tour buses or tourists. So it's very difficult to expand or to get more tourists in these these major attractions. So, but for a city like Taipei, the sky is the limit, right? You can develop more, build more hotels, make night markets more attractive, or there's a lot of shopping going on. So it's Taipei has a lot of potential to become even more attractive for people, especially in neighboring countries coming for a weekend trip, for example.
Well, on that optimistic note that the sky is the limit for visiting Taipei, and there's a lot of potential for Taiwan as well. I'd like to thank our special guest, Johannes Twellmann from Travel in Taiwan and TaiwanEverything.cc website for all the latest information about where to visit in Taiwan. Thank you again for coming on the show, Johannes.
It was a pleasure was mine. Thank you very much.
You've been listening to Residence Messenger on Taipei Broadcasting Station.